All right, everyone, welcome to the Hydrogen Convention Clean Tech Showcase, and a special welcome to our online audience. My name is Colin McDonald. I'm a coach and facilitator for tech startups at Edmonton Unlimited, and for the next hour, I'm going to be your host. First off, a big welcome and a big thank you to Edmonton Global. So thank you very much for co-hosting this convention and supporting Edmonton Unlimited and Plug and Play Alberta coming together to put this event on. Before going into the agenda, I'd like to provide some context for today's event. The Edmonton region already produces more hydrogen than anywhere else in Canada. Hydrogen will be a key piece of the energy mix in the future, particularly in Alberta. But there'll be some situations where deployment of hydrogen-based solutions could be challenging. Thus, it will be very important to develop complementary clean tech solutions that will help to satisfy all energy needs. Today, we're going to hear some of the opportunities for clean tech and clean energy innovation from our venture fireside chat. And we're going to be hearing pitches from some of the new companies already pursuing these awesome opportunities. Stick around, because afterwards, there will be a chance to connect with these founders and connect with these panelists. So, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome this awesome fireside chat panel. Take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for attending. My name is Jeff Sean, and I am the head of campus innovation at Edmonton Unlimited. Edmonton Unlimited is the city's innovation hub. It's a place where aspiring and current entrepreneurs can meet other folks, other like-minded folks, receive programming, supports, and any other resources necessary for them to take that next critical step forward as they progress on their entrepreneurial journey. I'm joined today by two local venture capitalists. I'd love for them to introduce themselves and their respective organizations.
Yeah, I can maybe kick us off. Hey everybody, my name's Tarek. I'm an associate on the Plug and Play Ventures team. For anybody that doesn't know Plug and Play, we have been around for about 20 years now as a venture fund based in California. We happened to stumble on the craft by way of our CEO's real estate holdings. He ended up leasing out some space to little companies called PayPal, Google, Logitech, and Danger. And because he didn't trust them to pay their rent on time, he asked for some equity as collateral. And so he kicked off his family office investing. He fell in love with providing risk capital at the absolute earliest stages. If we fast forward to today, we're in about 65 locations all around the world. We'll do about 100 to 150 deals per year. These range from scout checks on the order of 50 to 250K, all the way to more institutional checks on the order of $1 million out of our industry-specific funds. We also operate a corporate innovation platform. What that means is companies will come to us looking for the best founders to partner with for certain technologies of interest. And so that's what we do.
And I'm Zach Storms from Startup TNT. I actually have a background in chemical engineering, so maybe I have to be tested on that later today at this event. But I've been living in Edmonton for 10 years, and about 6 years ago now, I started a happy hour called TNT, Thursday Night Tradition. And it has now blossomed into the most active angel investing network in all of Canada. We've raised close to $20 million now for 110 different startups, all different sectors, generally pre-seed and seed stage startups. And we started here in Edmonton, we operate in Calgary as well. Actually, shout out to Jade Alberts, one of our very first investors, who launched Calgary with us and ran Calgary as a volunteer for many years. And we also operate in BC and Saskatchewan.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We've got some considerable brain power up here, and I'd love to tap into that immediately. So, we're here at the Hydrogen Conference, but, there are other established renewable energy sources, solar and wind, for example, which have been around for a while. Other than those, what emerging clean tech sectors are you guys actively looking at right now?
I can take a first stab. Generally, I think the two sort of highest level macro themes we're taking a look at from the fund perspective have to do with productivity and energy security at a very high level. When I say productivity, I mean, obviously over the next decade, we need about 500 terawatt hours of new compute capacity to come online. Where do we source that energy from? How do we integrate it into the grid? There's several ways to solve these problems, and I think founders are tackling it from the perspective of grid connectivity. Some are tackling the hardware problem directly and making processors more efficient. We're seeing buyers and hyperscalers like Meta and Google be very price insensitive to the power they procure. That means going directly to novel energy providers and digging geothermal capacity, for example, or thinking about SMRs with nuclear. And so there's a ton of ways to tackle this problem, but ultimately we need to figure out how to get this next massive chunk of energy online. From an energy security perspective, we're thinking about critical minerals, so how to secure, how to identify new opportunities, and also in circularity. So how do we take existing electronics, things like refrigerators, things like microwaves, recycle them back into our own ecosystems, and pull critical minerals from a massive supply of things that already exist, right? And so some of these things do sort of trace all the way back up to the geopolitical climate at the moment, but ultimately they all have to do with, immediate problems we have to solve in the near term, right? So I think we're shifting a bit towards the conservative end of the spectrum within climate. We're not looking at incentives anymore. We're thinking about, how do we solve these critical productivity problems, but do so sustainably?
I thought that was a great summary. At TNT, our approach is a little bit different because what we do, our philosophy is to source the best and brightest entrepreneurs from each community. And about 25% of our deals are in the clean tech space, but we don't have a specific clean tech objective or specific clean tech focus or subsection within there. So like if you just look at the companies in our current finale happening next week here in Edmonton, we've got 2S Water, who has a metal identification sensor for the mining industry to optimize their process water. We've actually got Aquacell, who's presenting later, a new type of battery system. And we've got a company called FireSafe AI that is detecting fires, forest fires, as soon as they start. So, from our perspective, it's more about identifying the newest innovation rather than a specific trend happening in the broader ecosystem.
Great, thank you. Tarek, you sort of touched on this in your response, but have you guys seen any changes in the environment, the investment environment over the past 12 to 18 months, particularly in funding priorities or perhaps valuation models?
Yeah, so I think the best way I can summarize this is I had a chat with a generalist investor about 2 weeks ago who said that they're not going to touch climate for the next 2 years. At the same time, just last week, we saw an exit in direct air capture with Holocene being acquired. So there's a lot of confusion, and I think the kind of top line sentiment is a little bit of fear and trepidation. In the rounds that we like to play in, the typical makeup is a few million to 10 million in a pre-seed or seed round, where you supplement that with some level of non-dilutive funding, right? So we're thinking about incentives, we're thinking about non-dilutive taps, both here in Canada and in the US. And realistically today, you can't rely on those taps anymore. And so what does that mean for founders? We're seeing some delays in fundraising. We're seeing founders kind of scramble to take initial term sheets they've been offered. This isn't the climate tech of 18 to 36 months ago, where I think terms were much more kind of founder friendly. And so to our portfolio companies, we're saying, it's time to hunker down. It's time to be a bit conservative, figure out, the shortest path to the next milestone. And I think there's a bit of a dichotomy between, climate specialist funds having the dry powder to deploy, but the generalist funds we've been seeing dabble in climate tech take maybe a bit of a step back and be less excited about the space as of late. So a little bit of confusion. I think it's definitely time to be a bit more thoughtful about your runway, but at the same time, there's tons of competition within the sort of climate specialty communities.
Yeah, I might just add to that. the recent pitch book data shows like why this is happening. Like the demand for venture capital is somewhere between 1.5 and 3 times the supply right now, depending on the stage that you're at. That's across all like North American venture capital. Cleantech's affected by that. It takes longer to raise money. You got to work harder. And I think personally, my perspective as a cleantech entrepreneur is actually focus more on your business fundamentals, why there's a strong business case for it. The fact that it's cleantech is an added bonus, I think, from a lot of investors' perspective, especially just a generalist investor.
So the two of you bring some considerable geographic knowledge across innovation ecosystems in North America. Are there any specific advantages that Alberta cleantech companies have relative to some of the other ecosystems around the world?
I think the 3 things that come to mind, obviously phenomenal talent coming out of our universities. I think any great startup hub will start there. I think our problem has historically been keeping Canadian entrepreneurs in Canada and helping them and incentivizing them to build in Canada. And so I think that's issue number 1. The other catalyst that I think Alberta has been doing phenomenally well in is incentivizing LP dollars to flow into Alberta-based venture funds. And so we've seen this more and more with maybe local Canadian venture capital firms hiring somebody to be boots on the ground within the province. But more so recently, we're seeing firms from down in the US either move their investment staff partially to Alberta or hire net new people in Alberta. I think obviously with these sorts of things, you need to have surface area for a phenomenal founder ecosystem. And the more you incentivize these funds to build communities as well as deploy capital, I think you'll start to achieve those network effects later down the line. And the last thing is obviously access to corporates and consortiums, right? We're historically not great at being the first to move, but at the same time, within climate tech, the number one target for M&A tends to be oil and gas conglomerates, and we've got plenty of those here. There is great work I think going on with the consortium-based R&D or pilot approaches with organizations like NGIF. It's just a matter of lowering the barrier and the threshold to engage with corporates like that.
Yeah, I thought that was a great summary, and I might add or just double down on access to cheap rent, cheap land, less expensive talent. Your money goes further here, and you also have access to a tremendous amount of government funding. So a lot of clean tech companies can match their investments 1-to-1, take that further. I think your challenge, though, is that in a smaller regional community like Edmonton, say, you need to make sure that you're maintaining the relationships at the global scale. So most of the companies I see that are successful are taking advantage of that. Your money goes farther here, but they have the relationships with their global community, the leaders in their space, who generally don't exist here in Edmonton, or certainly don't all exist here in Edmonton or Calgary.
Tarek, I wanted to sort of build off of your commentary about corporates in the space. Have you seen any models that work as between established companies and innovative companies, and what has made those relationships successful?
I think if we think about it from like a jobs to be done perspective, or problems that founders face as they're going about approaching corporates like this, I think the default state is get caught in months to potentially years of procurement, where once you start the process, it takes ages and ages to get to any level of a decision, right? And this is just an early stage evaluation. This isn't in full-scale commercialization or even piloting. And so what I've found tends to work with founders that want to move quickly is engaging third parties like Plug and Play, like NGIF, who can maybe act as the first layer of evaluation between the corporate and the startup. What we can do is, because we already work with these organizations, there's no 12-month-long procurement process for us. We can take an initial kind of data room, anything non-confidential. You take that to your business units. You try to prove out if there's a case to build out any level of partnership with an early-stage technology company. And then slowly but surely, as you increase those interactions, I think the odds of success are much higher. The other thing I'll say is a lot of the teams evaluating the technologies don't necessarily see it as competitive. one thing that we've been doing as a team recently is getting all of our kind of stakeholders around the table and roundtable type dialogues. And so it's less so about who's going to procure this first, because nobody wants to move first in Canada. It's more so about how do we build a consortium together and figure out different kind of key areas that we can de-risk to prove something as one innovation team amongst another.
Zach, maybe I can ask you, what can traditional energy companies do to become better customers and strategic partners for some of the innovative companies that we have coming up in the sector today?
I might generalize this to the Canadian business world in general. I'm doing this interesting project right now where I'm talking to a lot of our founders about their fundraising journey. And the one thing that comes up over and over again is how much faster people move in America versus Canada. And I know anecdotally a lot of people hear this, but when they're trying to do a sale to a U.S. customer, the customer is moving faster. They're more willing to take the risk on the new technology. And when they're talking to the Canadian counterpart, it's just like a much slower culture. And I mean, if you look at like our productivity as a nation and our R&D investment and business R&D investment as a nation, it's lacking. And so I might throw this back to the Canadian corporate world and say, hey, what can we do as a culture to move faster and invest in new innovation? Not just support founders, but to improve Canadian society, improve our own productivity.
Tarek, did you want to weigh in here at all? Do you have anything to?
No, I mean, I'll just double down on that sentiment. I think the one key trend recently that I've been noticing is there is a bit of a resurgence in, I think, a desire to build in Canada. We're certainly seeing that from the founder perspective and the investor perspective. I think the last domino to fall will hopefully be the corporate perspective, and ultimately having the same sense of urgency and lowering the threshold to engage with early stage founders.
So one of the initiatives that a good number of folks within the Edmonton ecosystem have been involved with recently is the MIT REAP program, bringing together corporates, academics, and government, to sort of help solve some of the issues that are still sort of making Edmonton a bit of a slower growing ecosystem. Is there anything from a government perspective that can be done to help accelerate growth as a clean tech ecosystem?
The first thing that comes to mind to me is, I think, clarity around incentives and, similar to what the US does with, SBA, for example. When you have these phenomenal people entering your ecosystem, their instinct is to, obviously act on their first movers and figure out the ecosystem that, wants to welcome them, first. I think we've historically lagged behind and moved slower than obviously our US counterparts in incentivizing those phenomenal people to stay in those ecosystems. And so I think, following through on the incentive provinces we make to founders at the earliest stages is incredibly important. And then the other thing I'll say is, from an investor perspective, if you want Canadian founders to stay in Canada, we need to be more willing to, be the first checks in, move much, much quicker than we have historically as a Canadian venture ecosystem. And I think more so that will ultimately enable, those founders to stay up north.
Well, I actually think the example you just gave there is an interesting one for this question, because my gut reaction is government-led innovation is the wrong way to position it. So trying to take like this government-led strategic approach, I'm going to build a clean tech mecca here, it's going to happen because I say it's going to happen, and I'll put all this money here. A lot of those efforts don't pan out. The REAP program is actually a pretty big investment. It's a few $100,000, but it's basically getting a bunch of community leaders together to work and identify what we can do as our own community to improve generally how many people are building companies, how fast we're accelerating those companies, how we're attracting more capital into those companies. And the community, the private citizens, the members in the community are coming up with these ideas. People in positions of a power with the means can now act on them, but it's not just like a government-led program to design it. And so I think I encourage government policymakers to think more in those terms. Another example I really like is actually the Innovation Catalyst program, which seems to be underused and not very well known, but this is a program where basically, as a founder, you get something like $250,000 as a grant but it's like a seed investment to work in partnership with the university and commercialize technology coming out of our universities.
That's great. So, given Alberta's existing energy infrastructure and expertise, what are the segments of the clean tech ecosystem that represent the greatest opportunity for leadership to emerge here?
I mean, obviously, I think you need to build where your customers are, right? And so if we think about this market in particular, we're seeing fantastic movement in, CCS, not just from a hardware perspective, but software to, accelerate accurate CCS tracking, for example, general sort of, molecule accounting for, carbon value chains, hydrogen value chains. This isn't just a pure kind of hardware space. I'd say, decarbonization at large again, given just the M&A landscape, Alberta's a fantastic place to be in the backyard of all these folks. But obviously, historically, startup ecosystems, I think, are a generational game, and we need success stories to emerge within Albertan clean tech for the next generation of founders to have the confidence to build here. And so I think some element of it is being in the right place, targeting the right market. Another element is just time and surface area, which I think, we're starting to see more network effects emerge within this ecosystem. But again, this is going to be a 3, 4, 5 generation game as opposed to the next, 2, 3 years.
Yeah, I want to just encourage us as a community to think about using the general heavy industry that we have here and what type of innovation can improve that heavy industry, as opposed to trying to create necessarily like B2C products that I think we don't really thrive at least not very well here in Edmonton. So I think that's a general resource, like, building technologies that make industrial processes go faster, more efficient, also have this massive clean tech benefit.
Perfect. We are coming to the close of our panel here, but I just wanted to end with one question. As investors, what advice would you give aspiring entrepreneurs looking to build clean tech ventures in Edmonton today?
I mean, very quick summary. I think the greatest founders have speed and momentum on their side. The greatest kind of pre-seed pitches I've seen are, this was a napkin idea 3 months ago. I've had 100 plus hours of customer conversations. We took the slide deck into a boardroom and we secured this buy-in from this great customer. Obviously, at the stage that we invest, you're not betting on much more than a team in a market. And if you have somebody that you can bank on, I think the greatest way to show that proof is through speed and a sense of a little bit of maniac urgency, for lack of a better word. And so I'd say that and show proof of that before you kind of seek funding from private markets.
And I think that's great advice. The only thing I would add is, are you a good fit for your product and your industry? What do you personally know about your product, your problem, your industry? What can you bring to this industry that gives you an advantage over other people that want to build a product like that? And then get started, go do it.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Tarek and Zach, for bringing your expertise here today. We look forward to hearing some pitches from some aspiring, or from some established, I should say, Edmonton companies.
All right, thank you, panelists. So I'll ask the panelists just to go take a seat in the front row. And I'm going to go over a few items and housekeeping rules. So first off, there's going to be 5 companies pitching. Each company is going to have 5 minutes to pitch and 2 minutes of Q&A. We're not going to be taking any audience questions. The questions are going to come from the panelists and myself. However, if you know someone who can support these companies, or you have some burning questions afterwards for these presenters, please stick around and ask those questions afterwards. Cell phones on silent, but please keep them handy. We have a bunch of QR codes that you can scan to find out more about these companies. And finally, one thing I'll say, just as a coach to startups, is one of the things I say is ABP, always be pitching. So whether you're, don't be a best kept secret, get out there and pitch in front of as many people as you can. Some of the presenters today are fairly new to this. Some of them have done this over 100 times. Regardless, though, let's give them let's support them as much as we can. Let's cheer for them. Let's clap for them. Jade, I'm going to rely on you for your energy. Zach, so let's make some noise for them when they come up and when they end. All right, let's get to those pitches. So first up, we have Connie of Grengen. Connie, please come on up. Yes.
Wow, you're a lot taller than me. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm Connie Stacey. I'm the CEO and founder of Grengen, think Green Engine, and we are a battery manufacturing company. But in particular, what a lot of people don't talk about is the physics around batteries. So we often talk about chemistry. We don't often talk about the physics, or more specifically, the electronics or brains that run a battery energy system. And that's what we manufacture. So we actually can work with any battery chemistry, and we do. And we manufacture everything here in Edmonton. So let me get started on the why we got into this space, and it's really the diesel generator dilemma. So diesel generators dominate the remote and temporary energy market, but at a staggering cost. So in 2023, we had a pilot with the Canadian Department of Defense where we went to look at replacing their diesel generators at remote temporary camps. And one of the things we found was they have about 9 camps a year, up to 1,500 personnel each, and they're running it entirely on diesel. And the cost of that, they have 9 liters of fuel to get 1 liter of usable fuel to site. And it costs upwards of $48 million a year for that fuel. And then there's a 365,000 tons of GHG impact. That's the equivalent of 39 million bags of garbage. So staggering impact when you consider that's just one user. So obviously we have a solution. So I'd like to introduce our remote autonomous battery systems. It features rapid deployable technology, fuel-free and maintenance-free operation, PCB levels cybersecurity. It's extreme climate ready and proven, and it has auto configuration and it has hot swappable packs. And that picture, by the way, is a picture of our most recent pilot, which was in the Arctic Circle where we ran our system for the past year. So give you a little more detail what I meant by some of that. When we talk about rapid deployment, in particular, what we're talking about is the ability for the batteries to act more like computers. So most companies really build just basic protection systems. We build computers. And we want the batteries to operate like computers do. So normally, batteries have a tiny little, you can see how small that is, dip switch that someone has to manually set on every single battery pack for them to be able to communicate together. We put all of that in here, so it's automatic. So if we have a grid array of 20,000 packs, we flip on the switch, they all auto-address, and then give themselves a network role of either leader or follower. It has the ability to detect and isolate anomalies and things like cyber attacks. No dip switch, no IP setup, it's just stack and go. And firmware updates can be done remotely. It's basic plug and play meets the military-grade intelligence. In terms of cybersecurity, we're actually the only battery pack manufacturer in the world that has cybersecurity built in, and it's built in right at the PCB level. So there's no software to hack, and there's no firewalls to go around. It's right at the firmware level. And it's tied to our auto-addressing, so if someone did try and hack it, everything would readdress, which means the only way you could hack it would be to simultaneously hack every pack in the array. So if that's grid, that's like 20,000 battery packs. And it already complies with the new Bill C-26 for cybersecurity for critical infrastructure. We also have remote autonomous abilities. So basically that ARC system was running entirely remotely. We controlled it here in Edmonton. It could go into a hibernation, return. Nothing had to be done on site. And we're now adding some AI-driven predictive analysis to that as well. In terms of market, well, you might say there's a little bit, a little over $180 billion in total addressable market. The serviceable market is a little over $6 billion for us. And a lot of it is focusing on some of those key markets for us, like military and defense and remote communities. In terms of our competitive advantage, when we look at what is out there, other battery companies like Tesla's Megapack or Fluence, there's no cybersecurity. Typical deployment is 12 to 16 weeks, for example. That Arctic system was deployed by 2 people over 3 days, and we could now do it in 4 hours. We can operate in austere environments. You don't typically see batteries up there. And basically, there's little to no maintenance cost. When you look at the diesel generators, of course, high cost, a bit of setup, lots of maintenance, and pretty terrible on the environment. But if you don't believe me, you can check out some of the many awards we've gotten over the last few years, and gotten the chance to be things like a guest speaker on a NASA podcast with their lead futurist. So, thank you. Just right over.
All right, Connie, thanks for going first. Awesome presentation.
Thank you.
So,
right down to the second.
I know it was down to the second. So Connie, I have a few questions for you. Could you tell us about some of your pilot projects?
Sure. We've had 3 successful pilots to date. The first was with the Department of Defense, where we focused on effectively removing the restraints around chemistry. So we used multiple different chemistries in the same array so that you could add on to systems without having to replace existing infrastructure. The second was that a Department of Defense project where we were reducing fuel for the Department of Defense camps. The third was the Arctic system, which we just finished wrapping up. And our next one is we have, one of our awards was actually with the International Minerals Innovation Institute, which is basically Cameco, Mosaic, Nutrien, and BHP. And they've elected to move ahead with a new pilot, so we'll be doing a 7 megawatt hour pilot with them coming up.
Amazing. So things are moving along. And what are some technical breakthroughs in IP that make you unique?
All of it, obviously.
That's what I figured.
No, you know what? Honestly, I think it really comes in our entire approach. So most people really are building basic protection systems. So the first thing that a battery system is meant to do is to make it safe to use the chemistry. Keep it in its nice, safe zone, not too hot, not too cold, all of those things. And it's pretty basic. Like, generally speaking, a board might have 150 or 250 components. This has 550 for a reason. And a lot of it comes to this bit around looking at energy security and making sure that you can't be hacked. So like the 2021 Tesla fires in Australia were widely believed to have been a hack. So that is something like being the only people in the world who have that is really quite unique. And all of that auto addressing is incredibly rare as well.
So we have a nice audience here. We got some people online. Thinking of one person who could change the game for you right now. Who is that? Who do you need to get connected with?
Well, I'm sure like every founder, it's always the person with the big check, but we are actually moving into our first raise, so we actually bootstrapped to this point. So we're looking at doing a kind of 2-phase. The first part being a group of, an LP, effectively, with a group of angels to extend our runway, and then doing a full raise to $15 million for the manufacturing equipment. So we're right at the end of certification right now. So we should be certified by probably end of August.
Awesome. Thank you for those answers, and we're at time. Thank you very much, Connie.
Thank you.
All right, well, it is my great pleasure to introduce our second speaker. It is Joshua Hennison from Aquacell Energy. Come on up.
Thanks very much, Zach. Hi, everyone. I'm Joshua Hannison. I'm a process engineer in training with Aquacell Energy. And today I'm going to be talking to you about batteries. Now, we're not talking about small batteries like you might find in a flashlight or a cell phone. No, these are giant batteries made of salt water that we sell in shipping containers to help strengthen our electric grid. So Aquacell Energy has gone from a battery system that's about this big, can fit on a table, to a system that's as tall as me in under 6 months. And the reason we're able to do that is we're leveraging technological innovations in the water treatment industry, in membrane technologies, and applying that to our process. And what this has allowed us to do is effectively bypass years' worth of research and development industry to scale up for a commercial product. And has anyone taken notice of this? Yes, they have. In fact, this year we've been approved for $1.4 million in government grants, and we have a signed pilot project that will be coming up later this year. So why do you need the AquaCell battery when lithium-ion technology has already been so widely and successfully commercialized? The fundamental problem is one of scarcity. Lithium-ion batteries rely on scarce resources. This is why utilities down in New York and California, for example, have committed to billions of dollars to deploy long-duration energy storage in non-lithium technologies. They'd rather work with something more abundant, like salt water. And what problem are we fundamentally solving? Well, every day when you come home and say you plug in your electric vehicle, you tell ChatGPT about your day, what happens when everybody does this all at once is it creates a power surge in the electric grid that the electrical grid is not currently equipped to handle. And the traditional way of solving this is to spend $40 million and years to deploy a new electrical substation. So our alternative is that using renewable energies like solar that are powered during the day, we can, for a $5 million cost, immediately deploy one of these batteries and solve the same problem. And as I mentioned before, because our technology is based on a supply chain that's already been commercialized in the water treatment industry, we're able to scale fast and deploy these basically as fast as we can find customers. So who is the team that's actually working on this? Our CEO and co-founder, Keith Keeland, worked in one of these water treatment manufacturing facilities and knows the technology better than anyone else. In addition to this, our co-founder and chief technology officer, Ellsworth Bell, has worked professionally in the fuel cell industry for many years and knows what it takes to take something from a pilot stage to a commercial product. In addition to this, we've got a team of employees and expert advisors. We've been part of some of the best accelerator programs in Canada, and we're working with contractors as well as some of the leading colleges in Alberta to ensure successful deployments of our product. And now, how does this actually stack up against the competition? Well, if you compare the AquaCell battery to some of the closest competition, we've been able to scale up much more rapidly and for much less cost than any of them were able to. And effectively, we've hit a Series A level milestone for the capital cost of a pre-seed raise. And speaking of an investment raise, we're actually in the process of raising a $2 million round right now. So if there's anybody in the audience or online, feel free to get in touch with me afterwards, and it would be great to get connected. But yeah, to summarize, AquaCell Energy, we're building giant batteries made of salt and water, and feel free to follow along as we change how we use our energy. Thank you.
All right, yeah, nice job, Josh. I know that Keith is the one that usually presents, so well done, stepped up. And you guys get to present at TNT next week.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, let's hear more about the pilot plant coming up that you mentioned at Medicine Hat. What do they want to use your battery for?
Yeah, so this will this is a test pilot to prove that the technology can work at scale, right? So we're looking at a pilot that will be in the field between 8 to 12 months, and this will show that it works in different weather conditions and give us a lot more useful data to continue to improve the technology. And in addition to this, we've got a couple other locations that we're currently in talks with and in the pipeline, and hopefully we'll be deploying some more pilots soon too.
Do you see this as like the ideal application, this pilot, replacing a substation?
Yeah, I think this is kind of our early adopters, right? So they have a lot of the know-how to support this type of project. And then in the future from there, we can expand into commercial and industrial facilities, which will greatly increase the market that we're able to address.
And what about the technology itself? It sounds so simple, salt water. What innovation has allowed you to do this at scale?
Yeah, sure. No, that's actually quite fascinating. I mean, this technology has been theorized about, I think, even back since the 1980s, there's been papers on it. But it wasn't until, I think, the mid-2010s when the level of these membrane technologies became sufficiently efficient that it's now viable as a energy storage technology. So we're really riding on that wave from a separate industry that allows us to commercialize quickly.
Okay, we have 45 seconds left. How long have you been with the company, and how many more people will you be adding to the team over the next 12 months?
Sure, yeah, I've been with Aquacel for 1.5 years. And I guess it depends on how our investment raise goes, but hopefully expanding rapidly.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you, Joshua, and we'll go to the next presenter.
Appreciate it.
Perfect. It is my pleasure to introduce CFO and co-founder of T-Rex AI, Peter Otrajev. T-Rex is a deep tech startup within the multidisciplinary smart grid space, allowing cutting-edge AI to interact over a localized market.
I'm lucky because Josh did all the heavy lifting and told you about the problem, but I get to talk to you about how I solve it from a completely different way. So I'm Peter, I'm from T-Rex AI, and I want to enable an AI-powered energy future. Basically what I do right now is I provide a different alternative method for load problem solving for utilities. So the team, there's 3 of us. We're all AI optimists, so we've been in the AI trenches for a while. This company started 8 years ago at the University of Alberta, and we bring deep technical expertise from AI and electrical engineering, and we're applying it to the problem of the grid. The grid right now has a really big problem, and that's that the way that we're using energy is changing. So for the first time in history, people can now put things in houses that have profound effects on the grid without the explicit consent of the utility. I'm talking about these things: solar panels, electric vehicles, electrification in general. And what this does is it makes a much more volatile grid, which is more costly to operate and harder to predict. What's the real problem, though? The problem is that all of these things are unmanaged. So there's a big incentive problem here, where the utility wants flat load curves, and normal everyday people just want to live their lives and do what they want. The trouble, though, is the pattern of daily life means that if everyone's doing what they want, there are these little times during the day where the grid gets really stressed. And we see this like this. So as clean energy goes onto the grid, the price of energy goes up. That's a little backwards, isn't it? Clean energy is supposed to be cheaper. Why do we pay more? Well, it turns out we need to solve this, in our opinion, through some automation and some real-time coordination. We have a product called Alex, the Autonomous Local Energy Exchange. And it's a coordination layer that sits on top of the grid. And we take a community, and we put it into people's houses, and it turns into virtual self-optimizing microgrids that coordinate when things go on and when things go off. From our most recent pilot project, we got these lovely things. So we didn't change any of the wires, we didn't change any consumer patterns. We are able to show that we could put 40% more energy through existing wires there while reducing the variance of the load by about 36%. This is equivalent to 2 or 3 electric vehicles on that grid without lifting a single finger. And we do this by putting our little Alex node in people's houses. So this is an Alex node it lives in your house. On it lives an AI. This AI learns how you use energy, so you generate and consume energy from your smart meter. It then controls any kind of DER that's in your house. And it syncs up with the other Alex nodes in the neighborhood via a mesh network. Cool, you guys know how it works? Let's talk business. So our customers are utility companies. They provide us data, and we provide them flat load curves. It's really easy. We've got 2 honorable mentions here, which are vendor companies and VPP providers, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in. And we make money right now off of pilot projects. We do what-if scenarios for utility planners. They have problems on how they want to deploy money, and we tell them different solutions for what they might be able to do. We want to move away from that, though. We want to get into the hardware and SaaS, where we put our hardware into people's houses, and they pay us for that. Last year, we got to do our first paid pilot project with the utility here. It was pretty sweet. And this year, we're on track to get 3 more. Now, the reason that I'm here is because last year, the whole question was, how does this work? I don't understand. And this year, the only question we've got so far is how many houses is it in? And I want to make it 500 within the next 3 years. To do that, I need about $10 million. I need to put about 2 hardware deployments in people's houses, and I need to outfit those deployments completely. So I'm gonna have to buy solar panels and batteries, and I'm gonna hire about a cybersec engineer. I need a hardware specialist. I need to manufacture all this stuff. So that's why I'm here. There's more time for questions now, so thank you. On? Yes, it's on.
All right, Pete. Lower energy bills, I think, is something that everybody can get behind.
I hope so.
Can you tell us a little bit about the pilot project that you undertook?
So we worked with ATCO Electric. They gave us some data for one of the cities here in Alberta. We were able to do a neighborhood of about 17 different houses, and what they wanted to know was what kind of options we could give them. It's what's called a hosting capacity study in the industry. This is where people put a certain percentage of distributed energy vehicles, like solar panels and all that fun stuff, into houses. The advantage of our technology is that we have the ability to run a boatload of these studies in a very short amount of time. So we ran about 1,500 different scenarios in 2 weeks. And that was all on-prem, and basically we're able to just give them this is what happens if everyone puts solar and if everyone puts battery, from like 1 person to every single person on this block. And yeah.
And as you scale up beyond Edmonton, beyond Alberta, what challenges do you foresee implementing your technology?
So the hardware component is hard. Having to manufacture all this stuff is, currently I make it in my basement with a 3D printer, and I assemble these things by hand. Servicing an entire, like even 1,000 houses for a substation would be a tremendous amount of effort for just the team of 3. So that's definitely a scale, but also data. We are an AI company. We live and die by our data. So utilities generally have a absolute, they call them a data lake, and it's tons and tons of data, but making it usable is something that we've found that is very, it can be hard. So some utilities have just absolutely amazing data teams. And those people invested in their data teams, and they're now leveraging that data for all sorts of business stuff. And other utilities thought, nah, this data thing, it's not useful. We're just going to abandon that team. And now they have to pay for hosting for data that they get from these AMI meter vendors. And they're like, I don't know what to do with this, and I don't have the in-house people to actually do something with it.
And just to finish off, who is the one game changer that could make a difference for you?
I was on a call today, and I need to talk to someone who is in asset strategy. These are apparently people who can tell me how much money different things cost and why the utility might want to do that. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, next up we've got Sean Collins joining us from Varma Energy. Varma is a waste energy company that's pioneering an approach focused on transforming landfill waste into clean electricity and heat while capturing CO2. Sean, the stage is yours.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having us. I'm Sean Collins, CEO for Barma Energy. We're one of the only power plants in the world whose feedstock comes from people. So we are in the process of registering the trademark of power from the people as one of the only feedstocks that all of us uniquely could participate in. So the premise of our business is to create a landfill-free and carbon-free solution to solid waste management. The black bin garbage that we all produce that's currently taken away to landfills, instead process that inside an industrial facility. There's about 2,000 of those facilities in the world. The feature for us is integrating carbon capture, so you're now a landfill-free and carbon-free solution to how we deal with the waste that we all produce. So the way in which we do that is through building large-scale industrial assets. I'm hoping this video plays, but maybe we're stuck out. We'll roll on, but I'll go back and explain a little bit more. So the way we do that is by building, it's about a $700 million asset that we're in development on in Strathcona County, split up between a large-scale waste bunker, furnace, boiler, turbine generator. There's about 5 stages of gas cleanup, including carbon capture. You can get a 95% carbon capture guarantee from vendors in the industry. And now for a facility like this, you can monetize the waste disposal services, you can monetize the electricity, and you can monetize the carbon credits. And so you sort of have 3 legs of the stool where typically that hasn't existed. So in terms of the challenge that we're facing, we sort of address the waste challenge head on. Canada is the landfillingest place in the OECD, and Alberta is the landfillingest place within Canada. And so we start off from a position where the sort of go-forward plan in Canada is that we'll landfill about 1.2 trillion pounds of garbage in the next 20 years, versus Europe that will combust about 5 trillion pounds of garbage in their waste-to-energy facilities and extract that energy back into their homes and into their industries. And so we take a lot of inspiration from the success of this industry that has existed elsewhere. In 1999, the European Union set a landfill directive, and slowly but surely, there's been a boom in the recycling industry, their composting industry, and their waste-to-energy industry. They made a decision that landfilling was no longer a compelling solution. It's the GDP minimizing move that creates a 100-year environmental liability, and as such, they've had a buildup of a multi-billion-dollar recycling, composting, and waste-to-energy industry over time. So our business, we're majority owned right now out of Oslo, Norway. We've got minority investment out of Finland, generally raise capital out of the European marketplace, where this is now a somewhat saturated market. Norway, with a similar population as Alberta, has 18 operating waste-to-energy facilities. We have none on the board yet, and we're hopeful that our facility will be the first. Sort of juxtaposed to Canada, where we landfill about 97% of waste post-recycling. And again, if no population growth and no per capita waste growth, which is unlikely, we'll put north of 1 trillion pounds of garbage into landfills in the next 20 years in Canada. So overwhelmingly for us, huge investors in Alberta. The carbon capture feature for us, Edmonton has the #1 and #2 biggest CO2 pipelines in the world. And so really focused on our first asset in the industrial heartland. Also working on projects in central Alberta, Fort McMurray, and see lots of opportunity out east in Sarnia long term. And so the executive summary on our business and the stage that we're at, we see waste as a growing global challenge that has done nothing but increase in its severity over time. The 26 million tons of waste that we put to landfill right now in Canada, we think we're wasting our waste. There's far better environmental, economic, and job-based outcomes for putting that waste to work for the rest of the economy. We do think there's triggers coming. You have seen large-scale policy directives come across. We're hopeful that you see sort of carrots and sticks that push us in a direction of more recycling, more composting, and more waste energy, and see waste energy with carbon capture as a really unique solution in that space. And so we are raising capital. We've got the 40% investor for our first asset. We're looking for infrastructure and private equity funding for our first asset as we try to develop and pioneer this industry in Edmonton. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Maybe the first question I have for you is, You mentioned the EU, you mentioned Scandinavia a little bit. What does that region maybe understand about waste to heat that we don't in Alberta just yet? And what can we maybe learn from them?
Sure. I think they just took a very coordinated and measured approach, as sort of a decision that landfills were not the solution they wanted for waste management, and then how do you create slow, stable conditions to force different outcomes? We sort of joke it's one of the few environmental graphs that goes in the correct direction and sort of at a slow and measured pace. And so they sort of put in policy and then never got rid of it. And we're a little bit in the habit of sort of doing things and then taking them away. And then, so a little bit of consistency on sort of a commitment to a different outcome. And they've just executed on it.
So given that maybe start in that region, what made the team select Edmonton and maybe Alberta a bit more broadly as the place for Varma as the next kind of iteration?
Yeah, pretty big Edmonton booster, so it was pretty heavy in the lean here. Answer sort of business-wise would be carbon capture, carbon capture, carbon capture. Alberta is the only sub-national government that has an investment tax credit for carbon capture, so you're 62% off your capex in Alberta for CCS. So we are sort of the epicenter of the global industry in this space. So the sort of investment tax credits and carbon pricing based in Alberta were huge wins especially compared to Europe, where all of their CCS is offshore. They include an 1,800-kilometer round-trip ship trip for their CO2 to sequester it. We're a pipe in a well to Lamont, and you're done, and no human has to touch it. So we're much lower cost. So better incentives and lower cost is like a 1-2 punch.
So where do you want to see maybe CCS or the carbon markets going a bit more broadly? Like, how do you scale them? What do we need to do from a policy perspective, from a private investment perspective, next maybe 5 or 10 years for carbon markets? What's like the ideal from your standpoint?
Yeah, you're seeing some explosive stuff going on in the carbon markets. Like Microsoft's announced 12 million tons and 3 billion in offsets in the last 10 days. And so the carbon removals market seems tremendously strong. I think we need policy stability in Alberta and Canada and then try to access the global buyers. There's a German company, Flare, that announced a $944 a ton carbon credit deal for their Edmonton project. They're moving their team from Germany here to do a project because of our carbon markets. So stability here and then access the global buyers is sort of what we would pitch.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean.
Our last presenter is Katrina Stewart of Savictus. Savictus produces hydrogen-rich synthesis gas from deep carbonaceous formations and associated saline formation water while simultaneously sequestering the CO2. I got through it. Come on up.
Great, that should work. So that was a great introduction. I won't even go into too much detail about our technology today, but it's really exciting to be here. We've been at the convention for the last 4 years, but this year I'm going to talk about an update of our commercial development. So thank you, Edmonton Unlimited, Edmonton Global, for having us. We're Savictus. I'm Katrina Stewart. We're a clean hydrogen producer here in Alberta. And we're working on our first-of-a-kind facility to produce 7 tons a day of clean hydrogen for the Alberta market. We are ready to build our first facility, and we anticipate drilling this summer with 7 tons a day of clean hydrogen coming online in 2026. We're not quite Edmonton. We're located east of Red Deer. So for those of you outside of the province or the country, we're halfway between Edmonton and Calgary. So really quite convenient. We can get into the industry up here or along the transportation corridor between Calgary and Edmonton. We have all of our approvals in place, and we're looking to start construction. All of our engineering design is complete as well, and we'll have modular equipment showing up on site, which we can just plug together and start up the facility. Our first facility is going to be 7 tons a day of clean hydrogen, but we can expand this very quickly. So as the hydrogen economy and the hydrogen industry increases, we can match the demand for that growing industry. It's a bit bungled, sorry, but our technology is called Enhanced Hydrogen Recovery. It's based on 2 proven technologies, underground coal gasification, UCG, which was formerly or successfully commercialized in the former Soviet Union. Our founder, he is the world expert on this, and he's led about 4 successful demonstrations since he left the program in the Soviet Union. We've also updated this with integrated CCS in deep coal. We did a large demonstration of this at our site, which is that photo, in 2021. And we've published some really nice papers with our partners at the University of Calgary. If that interests you, I can point you in the direction afterwards. So what's exciting about our technology is it allows us to produce hydrogen cleaner than almost any other method. So we can easily meet the 4 kilo per kilo target that the Canadian government has stated without much risk to our end user of an increased price. So we can achieve diesel parity even at our small scale facility. So without the benefits of economies of scale. Once we do expand to a larger scale facility, we'll have even better carbon intensity performance and lower cost. Oh, I'm gonna just add there, because we have time. We also have a really low fresh water demand. So all of our hydrogen, about 96% of the hydrogen that we produce actually comes from the saline water that is in the formation underground. So a lot of the challenges that southern Alberta will have with green hydrogen, we can kind of eliminate that as we rely on gross saline formation water. So we're looking to talk to people who are interested in purchasing our hydrogen. So if you're a partner or a customer that can help us get our hydrogen to market, that would be great. We'd love to chat with you about our technology, our pricing. My colleague Rob is also here today. So yeah, we've got plenty of time for questions, but thanks.
All right, thank you, Katrina. So what is the quality of the hydrogen from this first facility that you're building?
So we are able to produce fuel cell grade hydrogen, so that's 5 nines. And while not all applications require that, we didn't want to limit ourselves on this first facility. So yeah, fuel cell grade hydrogen.
There we go. And another question for you is, what pressure will you deliver at?
So again, this is kind of a more nebulous answer. We're looking to work with our end-use customer on what they need. So we're able to produce to 350 bar. If we need to go higher, we're still at a stage where we can add compression to our facility, but it's kind of what our end user needs. We're really looking at working with dual fuel use heavy transportation. And so fueling demands and compression demands on that are kind of are different, but we can produce to what the customer needs.
So this facility is opening up next year in Red Deer.
East of Red Deer.
East of Red Deer.
Yeah, we will start construction this year,
okay.
With drilling happening over the summer, fabrication of our modules, and then hope to be online for commercial hydrogen in the market 2026.
Amazing. And do you have some sense of where you might be going next?
So this facility is the smallest that we can logistically do it. So once the market is there and we have proven the economics and the carbon intensity of our hydrogen, we can scale as fast as the market needs. So within 2 years, we can scale 10x. But if the hydrogen market isn't quite there yet, we can pivot to produce methanol or ammonia, other critical feedstocks for the energy transition.
And I asked this before, I'll ask it again. Who do you need to get connected with?
We really need to get connected with our end users. So people in the Alberta market who are looking for clean hydrogen in the really near near future. It'd be great to talk to you about your demands, where you guys are located, and how we can fill in that value chain from production to end user.
Amazing. All right, thank you so much, Katrina.
Thank you.
All right, thank you presenters for your exciting and insightful presentations today. Thank you audience, thank you people online. We're all learned more about some of the opportunities that our local companies are pursuing in energy storage, management, production, including hydrogen production. So I just want to say thank you and a round of applause for everybody. If you like what you saw here today, come and check out more companies at Edmonton Startup Week. This is happening October 6th to 10th. And we will now be opening things up to networking. There will be dedicated areas for each presenting company. The panelists will be open for questions as well too. And if you know somebody who can help these companies out, don't be shy, come and approach them and talk to them. Thank you very much.